Again, this has been Singer-Songwriter Night here at the A-Town Center, a.k.a. the A-Town Special. I've been your host, Hunter Knight. We form a unity to jumpstart a better community. As always, make your 1% count. So we're going to kick it off here tonight with some interview questions. And what I really love about tonight, and what a lot of us here, young and old, has probably all been to Dan's music when he was running doing that thing here in the community. And I just really want to pick your brain over that, Dan, and just how long you've been doing music and really being a part of the musical community here in Anderson. So my question for you both, Ginger, feel free to chime in as well, is what influenced you both and keeps you motivated to pursue music? I'm not talking about famous people, but more like your friends, family, and people part of your local community.
Well, when I was a kid, my mom played piano really well, and my dad played trumpet not so well. And anyway, Mom would play these old songs, 5'2", Eyes of Blue, and Found $1 Million Baby in the 5 and 10 cent store. And I was learning how to play guitar, and so we'd stand around the piano, Dad would sing, and I'd read the chords on the sheet music and try to make my fingers go there unless it was a B flat or an F. And, got started doing that, and of course Beatles came along, and that kind of cemented it for me.
Yeah. Changed the game for you.
Yeah. And before that, Hunter, I wanted to be a professional golfer.
Okay.
I was a pretty good golfer. And there were no girls ever came to watch me hit shag balls. But we had a garage band, and man, every girl in the neighborhood was there. It was groovy.
No brainer.
Yeah, no kidding.
Really, no brainer.
Ginger was a band member when she was a kid too, but she didn't like all the girls coming around as much.
I didn't like the competition.
Didn't want any competition? Okay, well, fair enough. But, yeah, and then, I was 13, and that all of a sudden became my career. I didn't have plan B or anything like that. The only thing I wanted to do was be a musician.
All right, and then so is that how you guys met then? Like through playing music, or did you know each other like before that?
No, we met in high school. We both played in bands, but we never played in the same band.
Okay.
But we played with some of the same people. And so after high school, life went on, and our daughters were really good friends in junior high, high school. And then he lost his wife, I lost my husband through death, and 50-year reunion was coming up for our high school, and I told him, he was going to chicken out of going, and I was going to chicken out of going, because, by yourself and, all that. But so I told him that if he would go with me, I would keep him from chickening out. So that was kind of our big first date. And I think we've been together every day since.
Yeah.
Well, that is really sweet. So what influenced you with music, and what people kind of inspired you and your family and friends in your circle?
My grandmother lived next door. So when I was, probably 4, 5, 6, I'd go next door, and she numbered my fingers. And she'd go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, and I'd go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, through 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 5, 3, 1, 3, 5, that kind of thing. And so, I got to, my mom decided to get me a little chord organ, and so I played that, and that was by number. We used to have the music with numbers, and then I advanced on to taking lessons and started playing, reading notes and that kind of thing, and got into high school band, and just, loved playing music, loved all kinds of music. So then my mom got me in my first rock band. She saw an ad in the paper, and she called and said, well, my daughter plays, and I'm going, Mom, I don't have, but, I knew my chords because we had chord buttons on my organ, and so I'd push the C major, and I'd sound it out. So I go, okay, that's C major, and then, okay, 7, minor, yeah.
Theoretically.
Diminished, augmented, I was hearing, I was going, that's augmented. So I learned that in every key, and so when I went to that first audition for that band, I knew my chords, and that was good enough for them.
Little did your mom know that you were going to be playing in bars when you were 16 either.
Yeah.
How did that kind of work, like being younger and you guys like playing in bars at like a younger age? How was that like? Was it kind of neat, like seeing the different kind of like atmosphere that would be like playing? Because like now, like young people are really rarely playing bars anymore. You're playing in garages and stuff like that.
There's not
But you guys
any
kind of
bars
have
to play
access to that.
It was a learning experience.
That's for sure. That would be. That would.
Can't really. Well, no, it really was a good experience. And, you learn how to get along with people, and you learn how to work when you're tired or sick, or because back then, you play 7 nights a week, 4 or 5 hours a night. 45 on and 15 off, and the bar owner's looking at his watch when you take 16 minutes. And
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I'd be in high school, play in a bar till really like 2 or 3 in the morning, and drive home from wherever that was, and get out the car and go to high school.
So you're going on like maybe a couple hours sleep, if that, and then just kind of going to school the next day.
Yeah. Once in a while that happened.
So with having that experience and being part of it, was there anyone locally that you guys like looked up to as like mentors or people in the scene that you just loved seeing their shows and supporting? You guys kind of met playing that circuit, or just kind of like starting out early on in the music field?
Well, back then, when you're playing all the time, you didn't get a chance to see any
Fair
other
enough.
bands.
Did you see anyone that you guys like got to see a couple songs before you started setting up your gear during the night? I don't know if you guys did like a couple bill act, or if it was usually just one band that played the 3 to 4 hours.
No, it'd be one band.
One band act.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just used to playing any song that came to your mind. You just go ahead and do it, whether you know it or not.
So you kind of just did like an impromptu kind of set.
Oh, yeah.
When you did the
Make
performances.
them up
Okay.
as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn to write lyrics pretty quick.
Was there some that like you did kind of like that on the spot impromptu that like really impacted you, and like something that you really liked that stuck with you that you put into like a rotation of a set?
Oh, we both were in bands that did, kind of the standard 60s rock band stuff. And whatever, Chicago and Creedence Clearwater Revival and just that whole mix. Back then, as you know, radio back then, you could hear everything from, country to rock to almost jazz on a pop station, AM station.
Just
They'd
that
play
biggest
everything.
variety. And that's crazy because you don't get that anymore. It's very much like tune-specific audience, just certain style all the time. And they play the same song like 6 times in like an 8-hour block.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how like you got all of that early on, and then now it's kind of shifted from that, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever watch Rick Beato's channel on YouTube. He's really great.
Okay.
And he just recently had a thing about what's bad about the top 10 songs in the United States this year. And every one of them sounded the same. They all used the same chord patterns, the same bass drum patterns, just boom, 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 all night long. And they were all terrible.
Well, what I've noticed with a lot of mainstream stuff and things are really, they take a certain sound and instead of expanding upon it, they take that same chord progression structure, tweak it a little, to make the same kind of like nuanced.
Yeah.
And and sometimes that works, but when you hear that same thing in 4 different genres in the same chorus, like I was listening to this artist, really underground person, one of their big hits, and I heard Lizzo's new song on an album, and it was the same thing this person used that came out 2 years ago from like the same sample of the song, and I'm like, I've heard this before.
Yeah.
And like, I just think it's kind of crazy that some things we'll use or like different samples stuff kind of shift with bigger artists or try something that someone else did, but then a bigger name uses it and it succeeds more. It's kind of interesting how they kind of stay in that kind of wheelhouse with that.
Well, it would probably get a lot more attention that people sample other people's records and blah, blah, blah. But since there's really no money for songwriters these days anyway, that it doesn't make any difference. So, it used to be if somebody stole your song and it ends up on a 10 million selling album, you'd make $500,000. And now, if you sell 10 million of something, you get 50 cents and a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And everything's, pushed to being on streaming platforms. And then if anyone pays attention with the news recently or any Forbes articles, Spotify is getting really under fire now, as they should be, for paying artists barely nothing. And, you know, without artists, Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon Music, those stuff wouldn't exist. I mean, it's given exposure to artists for sure, but some people want to try to make a living and should get supported by that. Forbes came out with a couple of just recommendations, thing that they would recommend. And Dan, you and I were talking about this before we went on tonight, was how I said that they were talking about whoever you listen to, they break it up in percentage and cut this percentage of your paid monthly to giving into each artist, which would make a little more sense. It's still is not the greatest payment method, but it's better than what they're currently doing
better
now.
than what's going on.
And the reason, their whole reason behind it, and what they won't, and what they keep pushing, is saying that they're doing it to cut bots. Which, in my experience with Spotify, I ran into maybe 1 or 2 fake accounts on Spotify when it's all been legitimate musicians, and they pretty much solve that by typically sometimes having the verified check mark, and that's all you. And that doesn't really cost a whole lot or anything. And you have artists from 4 monthly listeners to 1 million plus that has that little verification on it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't cost them, you know, much that they're getting from all, you know, this artist's hard work.
Yeah,
So.
I've looked at a lot of things about how this should all work to try to get some kind of fair distribution for the artists, and I don't think anybody's come up with a good answer.
People have been saying unionizing the musicians. Kind of do a union is what I've heard a lot of people are saying, or like a lot of artists are like going on strike. If some artists have been pulling their music from the platform, I'm pretty sure I think James Taylor might have already pulled earlier this year or something, and some other artists have as well.
Yeah, you know, it's my cell phone is ringing.
It's down below. Other side, Dan.
I might figure out how to turn it off at some point.
We'll go ahead and segue to our next conversation there. I think it's enough people probably hear us talking about Spotify. But if you guys are intrigued by that, look it up and do your own research sometime. It's very interesting what's going on with that right now. My next question for you both, Dan and Ginger, is what impact do you guys want your music and performances to have on our local scene? And when people go see you play at shows, like when you guys play at Norton's and other places, what do you want people to leave feel like, or like what they've experienced from what you guys do and perform?
Well, you know, this is only the second event that we've done as a duo, and it's the first time I've played some of these songs out. Some of them, first time ever, was last week.
Oh, wow, okay.
And some of them only a little bit a long time ago. So, you know, this is all new to us, so I don't know whether it has any impact at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I know having the store for 30 years, I think, had a pretty big impact.
What do you think you do with the store? I mean, I remember going in and buying a guitar. You said you remember me from that. I was like back in high school. What do you think? How many people you feel like you touched with music, with running the Dan's Music Store for 30 years?
Yeah, I don't know. We sponsored a bunch of events for the American Cancer Society, and I was involved with Little Bit Country. I was essentially the music director for about 25 years for that, and lots of other charity events. And one thing that was cool about having the shop, it gave me a chance to see all my friends, but it also provided a safe place for kids to come. Yeah. Because we taught. I have no idea how many students came through there, hundreds, and it was some place where kids didn't feel threatened by adults. I think most of the kids that came in kind of thought of me as being just one of them, even though I was bald-headed and had white fur around my face. But I was safe. I was like a bartender is for people that go in a bar. Kids would talk to me about stuff I know they wouldn't talk to their parents about. Yeah. And unless it was something that was bad, I would never say anything to anybody about it. So it was a safe place, and it was fun.
Music's very therapeutic, and it's really interesting to see when you both touched how you got experience into music because of your family, and as your community with that, and then you spent 30 years providing a service and a safe haven, safe space for these kids to talk to you about their problems, to learn music, to experience things. You talked a lot about Van Morrison when you were playing up here, and how much that impact you had on you, and you're giving this impact that you might have experienced from that to people in your community. And I just think that is just the coolest thing that you've been doing. And you're playing music, you're doing stuff with Ginger, and you're kind of taking the step back in the community. We got these people here that are supporting you and supporting this.
Well,
which we don't do this enough here, but I want everyone to give a round of applause to you guys supporting this. We've done this for a whole year almost, and it's been really cool, and I really think good impact to this community.
Yeah, Hunter, I think this is really cool that you do this. There hasn't been a venue around here really devoted to singer-songwriters and the other arts that you guys support. So I just think it's great.
I appreciate it. Greg actually approached me on this, and I told Greg a while back, multiple times too, that I wouldn't be doing this or doing when I ran a radio show for a couple years in college, Nightly Special, without his presence in the scene. And, him just being he's like the father and grandfather of our music scene. He's been here from the beginning and supporting his kids' friends. I mean, Greg, you probably have, 10 kids if you, could adopt them all? Many sons, and it's just great seeing that. And when you make the impact your community, it then trickles down. And we're growing the love for music, not only for ourselves, but for everyone else. And, creating more of that impact to me is so important because you need outlets everywhere. When you talk about having charity events and having young children play and perform is great. I think it's awesome when Paramount would do forever the open jams. I remember 6th, 7th grade seeing some of my friends' bands play at the Paramount on a Friday night, playing on that big stage. You're 10, 15 years old, playing with your friends.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that needs to come back. And I think it's cool that house
thing.
shows have been doing well for younger kids and venues like this that are all ages. That you have, you get your adult beverage and things, but also enjoy just the community and communion aspect of just being and reflecting and experiencing organic art. I always feel like when you see stuff like this and pay to see something totally different experience. I personally, I'll always love this kind of stuff more. Just because I feel like part of my soul and things are just, you feel more and something that's more organic. When you all paid to kind of go to a venue, I feel like, I'm getting this cool experience and it's great, but it's more of this, I'm paying for this entertainment, not being a part of it. When something's small, it's like, you're a part of this and growing something. When you're something like that, you're paying, like everyone else is, to sit or stand for 3 hours and experience this big artist that, you've grown up with, which is cool, but it's different experiences.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like you take one, you can get one without the other, but you got to have both for them to both coexist. Can't have one without the other. That's what I was trying to say. So, Ginger, do you have anything else you want to weigh on to what we've been talking about, or anything that you want to add to this?
Oh, well, and speaking about, having a place for kids to have experience playing, and, it's not so much in the schools anymore to be able to, I started in grade school with little band class, clarinet and on up, but they don't have that anymore. But, I did have the experience of a church when I lived in Ohio that the music really needed a lot of help, and there was really not many people that played. So I noticed they had this big container of kids' bells, and so I started a kids' bell choir there, and it was amazing to see what, kids were so amazed that they could play, and they couldn't read music, so I would chart the music so they wouldn't have to know notes, but all they had to do is, know when their note
create
came,
a little something, hit the... And they all wanted 2 bells. They were all excited about it. And at one point, I had like maybe 30 kids in there. Oh, wow.
Only 2 sets of 2-octave bells. So a lot of them had the same notes. So I had to write extra parts so everybody wasn't playing the same thing. And a lot of those kids went on, and when they got in grade school, higher up, they'd have a little bell choir in school there. And they were shoo-in. They got to play, and, it was like a big thing. And so, a lot of them took up other instruments when they got a little older and started playing a little more in the church. But, they just need some encouragement, and, like I had, with my grandmother, and to say, to know that they can do this. I can do this.
And it takes a community sometimes to make that connection. Sometimes kids aren't going to have that in the home or have that with their friends or family, and sometimes it takes an outsider to get them interested. So, doing that is just, that was your step in that process of your life, in that community. It's what you wanted to do, and that's
and they got to
awesome.
get to have a little performance, and, it's a big deal.
It is.
Yeah.
We're getting a little close on time. We'll take a little break after this last question here. And if anybody wants any beverages, either be adult beverages or just soda, hit me up and I can take your money and get change for you with that. But our last question before we take a little break is for both you, Dan and Ginger, is how can we as a musical community progress the arts and to have artists and musicians flourish in Anderson? What do you guys any thoughts about that? What steps that we can make?
The music arts. I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good question. It needs to be done.
Yeah.
I think people just need to come out and support live music and make sure their kids have lessons and kind of give it a new life. Seems like it's just kind of dying down, and that's why
I think
music is so dumbed down.
Sports is, I feel like, is getting pushed more again. And I feel like sometimes people forget that there's other outlets if you're not like inclined to do so.
Yeah,
Because you don't only just have music, you got painting, you got poetry, writing.
There's kids
drawing.
that can't do athletics and don't care about athletics, but they have this artistic side to them, and that needs to flourish.
More outlets for it, you know, and kind of like, and
Yeah.
it's cool to see more open mics and things opening, but again, I just see it more at bars and stuff. And I think it'd be cool to see schools trying to do something after school where things can hang out and stuff. Like, you have sports clubs. Why not have a music club where you just jam out or something a little bit and just kind of like play together, just have the music room to hang out. Maybe you don't want to be in band, but you have other stuff you want to pursue.
Yeah.
Because for me, trying to play my instrument, my sax outside of band, it was hard to do. I just played scales. It was hard to just kind of try to create something in my head because I just would start doing it and then I just start playing a scale. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I would keep trying and trying. I just couldn't get past that. So what about you, Dan? What do you think we could do to help flourish the scene?
Well, things like this are great. Jeff that has Wounded Tiger Music.
Absolutely.
Doing some jam sessions and some learning for beginners to be able to sit in and play with people. Learn a couple chords and
that's great because it's a great community. You build upon that. That's just something that guys get together, no matter your experience or intimate level, and just enjoy the love of music. And again, Wounded Tiger has been a wonderful sponsor of us. Again, check them out at woundedtigermusic.com, and also has a little booth at Trader Bucks as well you can check out also. Again, guys, thank you for your time. We're going to come back in about 5 minutes. Dan and Ginger, you guys have been wonderful. Give them another round of applause, everyone. We're going to get Wayne Pennington set up here. We'll take a 10-minute break. If you need drinks, come see me.
Just 1 second. I do have one kind of funny, kind of interesting Dan Daugherty story. It was after our heady performance at the Northside Junior High School talent show, and I had a bass guitar. It was a Hagstrom. Dan actually reminded me of this.
That was my first bass that I owned, was a red Hagstrom bass that I bought off Greg.
Well, there's a reason that I sold it to you, Dan. After that, I think I came over to your house and jammed with you and your brother one night. And at that point in time, I realized that no matter how much I practiced or how much I tried, I would never be as good as you and Steve. At that point in time, I sold you that guitar. I bought a 2-track cassette deck. You followed your path, and I've kind of followed mine. But I remember that. That was the ugliest guitar I have ever seen.
It was pretty ugly. It was
my God.
bright red, and it had this cream color pickguard that had a big gold swimming pool in the middle of it.
It was hideous. It was hideous. And it had like probably the oldest flat wound bass strings. They just kind of thudded. They didn't really make a tone. They just kind of thudded.
That's my favorite bass sound, Greg.
So anyway, I just had to relate that story. Dan, I'm so proud of you.
Oh,
Ginger.
Thank you, Greg. I'm proud of you. Greg has done a lot of work around town, helping with indie bands and punk bands, and he's done a lot to promote all kinds of music around here, and really under the radar, doing house parties and just all kinds of things. And so I think we have to have a round of applause for Greg for that.
Now, give it up for Wayne Pennington!
Oh, howdy. Hello.
Singer. We're a little behind on us tonight, but that's no worries here. We're going to get it back going here at the singer-songwriter night here, the A-Town Special, a.k.a. the A-Town Special. All right, so before we get you on your tunes here, I want to do the full interview. I just want to throw you out one question here before we get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
A little two-parter here. I just want to know what impacted and influenced you as a musician. And I'm not talking about artists, but friends, family, or other musicians you're friends and part of, no one's super famous or anything, unless you're personally friends with them. That works too. And then also, how can we as a musical community progress the arts and have artists and musicians flourish in our musical community?
That was a two-parter.
It is a two-parter.
Okay, I grew up, my granddad played music, a lot of my family played music. My great-granddad played mandolin, that's probably the earliest memories I had.
Okay.
So it's kind of in the bloodline,
All right.
always doing it. I've been writing songs for about 15 years.
Okay.
Started doing that. I just recently started learning covers and allowing myself to learn covers, which is weird, you know what I mean?
What's the love or hate with that?
Well, I wanted to get it done myself and find my voice and then do the things that I liked. So now I like doing some Willie and Waylon and Eagles and stuff like that, just the old classics that everybody wants to hear. What was the second part? How can you impact?
Yeah, how can you impact?
This part's for you. Oh, well, you just give your money to the poor people making arts, because if they're making arts and you like it, they're more than likely poor. I'm in a band called the Poor Valley. Speaking of, you can find our music at WaynePenningtonMusic.com. You can go there and download the music. That helps a lot.
Yep.
Streaming anywhere helps. It really does. Spotify gets a lot of flack, but it gave me $20 last year. It gave me $20, and that's because you guys listened to it. So yeah, it is. It means a lot to me. So.
Well, that's great to hear. And guys, keep on pushing and flourishing in your local music scene. And if you guys ever want to contribute or volunteer in the music scene or don't know how, feel free to always give a shout out to me, Greg, or anybody that's here that's been a part of the scene. If you want to help out, whether it's helping us run door for some events or in a band or trying to network with other musicians, feel free to reach out and let us know.